Hello and welcome to Public Speaking Tips and Tales with Speaking Coach Kelly. This podcast is dedicated to helping you become a more confident and effective speaker. I'm your host, Kelly K. Walker, and each week we'll dive headfirst into the deep end of public speaking. I'll share real stories from the stage, interview other speakers, and evaluate speeches to show you what works on stage and what doesn't. So let's get started. When you are on stage speaking to an audience, you have several different jobs to do as a speaker. And just like Liam Neeson, these jobs require a very particular set of skills. Here are a few of those skills you need to have in order to be an effective speaker. 1, you need to be able to get out of your own head and stop making it about you and focus instead on what your audience needs. 2, you can see a story in the most random things you encounter during the day. 3, you can tell that story in a way that transports your audience back to that moment with you. 4, you can match your body language to your message so there are no distracting discrepancies between the two. And 5, you can transmute all of that fear into excitement and use it to fuel your highest energy levels on stage. Luckily, you don't have to have all those skills when you start out because just like any other skill, they can be learned. All you need is regular practice and effective feedback from a coach to continually improve your game. While these are all great topics that I could literally do a week-long training on, and maybe I will, in this episode, I want to hone in on the one skill that can help you connect with your audience more deeply than all the other skills combined. And that skill is being able to tell a story that brings your audience back through time with you to that moment that you're telling them about. Because storytelling is what creates deep connection between a speaker and their audience. As the listener, being able to put themselves in your shoes lets them live vicariously through you, and it lets them recognize themselves and their own struggles in your story, which makes them feel less alone in this world. A highly effective way to do this is to use what I like to call snapshots. A snapshot is a highly detailed moment in a story where you paint a picture so clearly that your listener is transported through time and space to that moment. Snapshots are the magical parts of a story that a person will always remember, even years later. Let me show you what that looks like. Listen for the snapshots as I tell you this story. I remember being in an audience of several hundred people at my first personal development event and listening to this incredible speaker telling a story about a skunk with a jar stuck on his head. I felt his anxiety of being sprayed, his shock at finding this skunk with the jar stuck on his head, his determination to overcome his fear and rescue this poor starving creature, and his eventual triumph when he was finally able to de-jar that poor skunk's head. I felt like I was there with him that day, and even more, I felt inspired to be like him. I felt the first stirrings of wanting to get on stage myself, and it was all because I felt so deeply connected to him through his storytelling skills. I soon decided to do something about those stirrings and found myself attending every speaking event I could find, first as just a spectator and then eventually as a student. In October 2017, I was at a speaking competition in Sandy, Utah, to not only hear the speakers, but more importantly to me, hear the feedback from the judges. I wanted to learn what worked and what didn't work so that I could follow my new dream of becoming a speaker. This event was in a crowded side room of a bar with 4 rows of banquet tables at which we had all just finished eating our lunches of burgers or grilled chicken salads. The judges had just given their feedback to the final contestant and were heading back for a short recess where they would come back from to announce the winner. I found the whole event to be exactly as amazing as I hoped it would be and very helpful to me as an aspiring speaker. So I was really happy that I had shown up for this event. So the judges came in, announced the winner, and everyone applauded. And before we all stood up to leave, the MC announced that they had one spot left for next month's contest, and he held up the clipboard, inviting anyone to come up and claim that last spot. It was at that moment that I learned that sometimes your body can take over when you want something badly enough, because suddenly I was up and making a beeline for that clipboard to sign up for the contest in a month. I was weaving my way through the clumps of excited people who were chatting and saying their goodbyes when I apparently blacked out. Because the next thing I knew, I was standing a few feet from the exit with no memory of how I got there. Now, I'm assuming that fear took back control of my body and was trying to get me out of there as quickly as possible before I could get to that dreaded clipboard. Well, luckily, there's a restroom right next to the exit. So I pivot and I run into the ladies' room. There's a long row of wooden doored stalls to my right and a long row of sinks to my left. I randomly fling open one stall door and flop myself down on a toilet to begin one of the most epic inner arguments of my entire life, going back and forth between future speaker Kelly and scared out of her mind Kelly. And during this 10-minute struggle with myself, I am serenaded by a chorus of flushing toilets, the deafening racket of the old-fashioned pump handle paper towel dispensers, and the occasional psh psh of the industrial orange air freshener going off somewhere over my head. Finally, my future speaker wins the argument, and I get up and I stride out of that restroom like a woman on a mission to find the man with the clipboard. But just between you and me, I was also secretly hoping that I had been in there for so long that everyone had packed up and left. But nope, there he was, pen in hand, looking at the clipboard, his back turned to me. I brace myself and I go up and say, "Hey." He turns around and says, "Oh, hey, I thought I saw you leave. Did you forget something?" "Yeah, apparently I forgot I want to be a public speaker." "Is that spot still open?" I am still so scared of public speaking at this point that I burst into HTT when he said yes, it was. HTT, by the way, means hysterical tears of terror. After a quick flash of alarm on this man's face, he tries to comfort me, and when that doesn't work, he gingerly holds out the pen and says, "Well, we'd love to hear from you." I take the pen and somehow sign my name through the Niagara Falls of tears rushing down my face. And in that moment, I am fairly sure that that poor man thinks he will never lay eyes on me again. But the contest arrives and I show up, ready to win, or at least not get booed off the stage. When he calls my name, I nearly throw up, and I start across the room like a zombie towards that stage of doom. And about halfway there, I realize he kept talking after he called my name. So I focus in on what he's saying in case he's giving me new instructions or something. But what I hear him say is, as I start to climb those rickety narrow stairs next to the stage, is this: "You guys, Kelly left and came back last month to tell me she had to have this spot. She was so scared she was crying hysterically, but she's here today. She has got to be terrified out of her skull, so give her a warm welcome." Now utterly humiliated by that introduction, I walk out onto that very high stage. Did I mention I'm scared of heights? And I go right up to the front edge, the tips of my boots hanging over the edge into thin air. The spotlight is hot and so bright it's blinding, so I avoid raising my eyes too high for fear of burning my retinas. The judges are lined up at a table right in front of the stage, staring at me expectantly. I'm holding the microphone in my right hand, and with my left hand, I'm playing with the bottom button of my jean jacket. I scan what I can see of the audience, and I take a deep breath. And then, much to my horror, I realize that I have completely forgotten how my speech starts. So I stand there and I try to remember it. Any of it. You know how sometimes a speaker comes out on stage and they just stand there for a few seconds and they look at the audience and you can feel the power of that pause and you just know the speech is going to change your life before you've even heard a word of it? I was hoping that that's what everyone was thinking was happening. That I was just pausing for a super powerful effect. Before that pause stretched out too long and started to become awkward, I made myself open my mouth and say something. Anything. The words that came out were, "This has been the worst year of my life. And also the best." And it all started when I got fired in January. I then went on to give a version of my speech that I had never given before. And I watched as my words made people laugh. And then made some of them cry. And I realized that becoming a speaker was no longer a dream. It had become my reality, and I was actually doing it. Yes, that story still gets me emotional. Woo! Okay, so let me pull the curtain back now, and let's talk about what just happened. I told you a story full of snapshots in order to transport you back in time with me. So I'm just wondering, were you able to recognize what some of the snapshots were? Here's a few of them. Me sitting in the audience listening to that skunk story. Or me weaving my way through the clumps of excited chatting people. Or blacking out on my way to the clipboard. The bathroom argument with the chorus of flushing toilets. That humiliating introduction. Hanging my toes off the edge of the stage. And realizing that I was actually a speaker. Okay, those are several of the snapshots from my story. And I hope you recognize them for what they were. If not, go back and listen to it again and see if you are transported back in time with me to those moments, because that was my plan. For some contrast, let's look at what that story would look like if I hadn't used any snapshots. Boy, it would have been really short. It would have gone something like this. I heard this guy speak at a personal development event, and he was so good at speaking that I decided I wanted to become a speaker. So I started going to lots of events about speaking, and I ended up at this speaking contest. And when it was over, I decided to enter the contest for the following month. But I was really scared, and it took me a lot of courage to go sign my name on that clipboard. And then when the day came for the contest, I got up on the stage and I was so nervous I forgot my speech. I forgot how to start my speech. But I made myself start talking and it ended up working out great. In fact, I won the contest and now I am a professional speaker. What did you think? That story told without any snapshots, I feel like it's just data. There's no emotion. There's no connection. It's just information. That is why snapshots are so important. When you incorporate snapshots into your speeches, you will be the speaker that everyone remembers and the speaker that everyone wants to have at their events. So I challenge you, when you do your next speech, make sure you put at least 3 snapshots into your speech so that you can connect with your audience deeply and be remembered afterwards. If you want to get on stage or be a better speaker than you already are, the key is storytelling. And I know a lot of speakers or aspiring speakers have trouble figuring out which of their stories to put into their speech. Well, I can help. I have made a workbook designed specifically to help you figure out which of your life stories will be the most effective in your signature presentation. You can download my workbook for free and use it to find those stories that will resonate with your audience and get you to your goal of changing lives from the stage. You can find the link in my show notes, or you can go to kellykwaller.com/workbook. And my name is spelled KELLYKAYEWALKER.com/workbook. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast or have your speech evaluated on an episode of this podcast, just drop me an email at speakingcoachkelly@gmail.com and I will let you know how to make that happen. Thanks for listening. And if you like this episode, please subscribe, follow, leave a review, all the things. And I will see you in the next episode.